Stop dados really are dados that just stop before the end of the board. The idea is to conceal the end of the dado when face frames or other decorative moldings aren't going to cover it up. We can make stop dados with the same tools we use to make full-length dados. Whether we're using a router table or the table saw as we're doing here, we have to mark where the cutter starts cutting on the wood. And I'll mark that point on the fence on a piece of tape with the mark just high enough so we can see it over the wood. Then we have to lay out on the wood where we want the dados to stop. And then we want to bring that mark around to the other surface so we can see it while we're making the cut. We don't need anything fancy, just a clear mark that we're able to see at the edge of the board. And we need to lay out where the dado itself is going to be so we can get this set up right the first time around. When we make the cut, we start at the open end of the dado and carefully feed the board across the cutter. Then when our layout line matches the line on the fence, we stop the board and shut the machine off and wait for the cutter to stop. I like the router table for stop dados because it leaves so little material to clear out. On the table saw you have this ramp, and that's a lot harder to chisel out and get it flat. Whichever machine is used, I found it easier to draw layout lines to make squaring off this dado easier. I'm going to do something here now that I need everybody to promise not to spread around. I'm going to use a hand chisel. With the router bit, we only have to chisel out the corners, and even I can do that. It just takes a few cuts so we can usually pop this material out. We want to be sure that the floor of the dado is flat all the way up till the end. Clearing out the material on the table saw version of a stop dado is way more difficult. Take the time to go back and make sure the floor of your stop dado is completely cleaned out. It'll save you a lot of frustration later. Next, we need to establish the length of the notch that we have to cut into the board. With the board in its final position next to your stop dado, just make a mark on it where the dado ends. Now seat the board fully in the dado, slide it up to the end, and use the edge of the dado as a guide to draw your layout line back to the mark we made earlier. It's important to remember that this layout line is above the dado and should remain after we cut the notch. We use this line as a guide, but the saw should never actually cut into the line. Using a good dovetail saw or razor saw, carefully cut away the material from the notch. If you're not real sure of yourself with the saw, stay away from the line a little bit and you can go back later and tune it up with a rasp. And the last cut is just to define the back end of the notch. I usually make this cut a little farther back than necessary to give myself some wiggle room during assembly. And now if you paid attention and followed your layout lines, you just made a stop dado. All that's left is to sand away the pencil marks, apply some glue and put it together.